Hi guys, so today I wanted to talk to you about going squadronless in Armada. It's something that doesn't happen as much as it used to. Earlier in the life cycle of the game, it was a little more common to see this happen, but lately it's just really not so much of a thing anymore. I think one of the driving factors of this is because the relay keyword has really allowed carrier fleets to operate more safely than they used to. So earlier, like in the first year or two of the game, I would often go squadronless, and even if somebody had a Reimer ball or a really heavy bomber build for the rebels, I would just fly around the squadrons and blow up their ships, and then win. It's not as easy to do that anymore because of relay, and also the game has changed. There's a lot more stuff that's available now, so it's tougher to do it. Um, and another thing is that we also had some cheaper squadron, like Z95s, for example, have also come out, and at only 7 points, it seems nowadays like it's just generally worth it to take at least a few squadrons. You don't have to go necessarily crazy with squadrons, but even 2 or 4 squadrons is such a profound investment in what it's going to potentially save you. Because if you go to play at a tournament or a league or anywhere where you're going to play multiple games, you're going to face squadrons. And so that's really the problem is when you're building a big, and squadronless fleet, you're going to basically get destroyed by bombers at some point. So that's kind of one of the things you have to prepare yourself for. So um, it's very, very risky to do that. But I wanted to talk to you today about potentially doing that and what kind of benefits that you can get from it. So one of the things that you can gain is a singular strategy, right? So instead of having to divide up what you want this ship's going to do the carrier stuff, and this ship's going to feed the carrier extra squadron tokens, and then this ship's going to be the attacker, and then this ship's going to be, the the tank. It allows you to just to say, all right, you know what, I want my ships to all be um, trying to flank enemy ships, or I want all my ships to stay at range, at long range, or I want all my ships to be able to fly in close. Like maybe I'm going to run all star destroyers, and I want them all to just try to keep enemy ships in their front arc. And it allows you just to focus on a single strategy. Um, Another thing it lets you do is it lets you kind of narrow down the number of command dials you have to worry about. For some people, this is a big deal. If you have ever gotten the wrong command, um, by effectively removing 25% of the commands from your available list, it gives you the option of having a much less chance of making a mistake. If you do run squadrons, it really stinks to have a squadron command dialed up and either A, your squadrons are all dead by the time you get to use it, or B, they've moved out of range and you've had to take a turn the opposite direction, and you're not in range of hitting any of them. So it's a real bummer when that is a complete waste. So now you only have to worry about whether you're going to be shooting, moving, or engineering. So it effectively increases the game's easiness for you. And then the most obvious thing is that you get more points available. So even if you would normally have just run like maybe 4 squadrons, well, that could be like 30, 40 more points, 50 more points even, depending on what you were going to run. So that's more stuff you can put a whole other ship in that way, or it gives you more points for upgrades, or if you're going heavy squadron, it can be multiple extra ships. So it allows you to really, like, if you're going with that single, maybe that Akbar broadside list, it can give you a whole extra ship to do that. So it's a big deal, and it's a big deal for points. So that's one of the advantages that you can get. But like I said, it is risky, and there's a couple of, I guess, key concepts that you're going to have to keep in mind if you're going to try to do this. The first one is that you need to survive. One of the things that I think a misconception I was under earlier in the game was that if you tabled your opponent and got all of their ships off the board, you instantly won. But that's not actually true. The game actually ends at the end of the round. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're surrounded, like maybe your last ship, right, is surrounded by B wings or enemy bombers, and you do blow up the enemy ship, well, their squadrons still do get to activate during the squadron phase. And so you have to be able to survive that. Against a really heavy squadron build, that's easier said than done. But not only do you have to survive that last round of shooting, but you have to survive basically the alpha strike. At a certain point, you're going to be moving to contact with the enemy, and they're going to have that initial wave where they send all of their squadrons after probably your flagship or whoever is going in first. Um, and that can be tricky to survive if you don't have some kind of way to mitigate that damage. The death by 1,000 cuts is gonna wreck you. So you have to basically be prepared to survive the initial contact with the enemy. You also have to be prepared to chase down enemy ships. If you're trying to table somebody and and they decide they're going to use relay and they're going to spread their ships out and send them all over the place, or have somebody just do a nav and go down to turn speed 0 on turn 1. You're going to need ships that are fast enough to be able to get to the enemy ships. Somebody's running away from you. If they have CR90s and they're all flying away from you at top speed, you're going to have a hard time. So you want to be able to have ships that can chase down enemy ships. You do have to table your opponent. I mean, it's not actually crucial. You don't have to, but it's generally the one of the ways that you tend to win by getting all of their ships off the board. If against somebody who's very heavily squadroned, if you're going up against a build that only has maybe 2 squadrons and they were just there to stop other squadrons, then you don't necessarily have to table them. But against a maxed out bomber list that might only have 3 ships, you're gonna have to probably get all of those ships because you may not be strong enough to kill all of the squadrons. Usually when you go squadronless, you're just trying to take out the ships and then win by default when, and get a 400-point win there. Another thing is go for the flotillas. Typically in a dangerous squadron type list, the flotillas tend to be a much bigger threat than they would be otherwise. And this is because of a couple of things. For one, Bomber Command Center. Bomber Command Center is going to be huge, especially with B-Wings, especially with any bomber that's rolling more than 1 die. Or even if they're just rolling the 1 die, but Bomber Command Center is nasty. You definitely want to take that out. The other thing is Slicer Tools is actually going to be particularly damaging to you if you have no squadrons, because then it's a no-brainer. If you have a balanced fleet and you have squadrons, then your opponent has to sit there and think, well, what do I want to give you? And honestly, sometimes I've had games where I was like, you know what, the command you gave me is actually better than the one I had chosen for myself, so thank you. And you should thank them anyway, because nothing really rubs it into your opponent by making them think they did the wrong thing. And even if they didn't, you're playing mind games with them, so it's fun. It's fun to do that at that point. But Slicer Tools is pretty rough if you don't have any squadrons. So keep that in mind. Granted, that shouldn't be what cripples you, but it's a punch in the nose, effectively. And then the last real key concept is just be prepared to lose horribly. It's just gonna happen. If you're gonna take that big of a gamble, you're gonna lose, and you're gonna lose a lot. You may not lose everything, and you'll probably win a couple of times, and sometimes you might even win really big. But that generally, by and large, you have to be prepared to lose. I mean, it's a fun game anyway, so it's something you should keep in mind. Um, there are a couple of things people tend to run that aren't always that great. I'm going to pull some of them up here. I have Ryan Kingston's Armada Fleet Builder open here, so I'm gonna kind of walk through this, and at the end of the video, I'm going to show you a couple of fleets that I have built that might just work. Um, Basically, let's pull up Rebels here. A thing that people tend to do is, we'll pull up this. Is quad laser turrets might come to mind, right? It's while defending against a squadron, you have counter 1. Well, that's not that great. All right, it's 5 points, so it's not super expensive, but it's also not super cheap. 5 points is kind of medium cost, but you have to have this on every single ship if you want it to be effective. And not only that, it's you have a 50% chance of not doing damage with the counter 1. So most squadrons that are of a threat to you, have lots of health that you're not going to be able to kill in a single round, or maybe even 2 rounds, or maybe even 3 rounds. And you're probably going to be spending a lot of your time shooting at enemy ships. So if you don't have any squadrons to stop your opponent, they can put them all in the same arc that to make you choose. All right, you can go anti-squadron, or you can actually take a shot at my ships. Usually you're going to take a shot at the ships because, like I said, you're trying to table them. So that's the idea here, is that counter one is just isn't enough. Now, this can be a little bit better. Like if you have something else to give you rerolls, like Tor Far is helpful, or if they ever come up with anything else that increases the counter um, for ships, this has potential. Um, and it would also be nice if you could equip multiple of these and it stack, but you can't do that. But I mean, in theory, if there was ever a rules change or some special card that lets you do something like that, I could see maybe on an ISD1 running a couple of these. It would be interesting. I'm still not sure that would be great, but I would love to test that out. But quad laser turrets, I just don't think they're quite as good as they could be. Another one that I initially looked at and didn't like, but then kind of came back to when I was brainstorming with, was cluster bombs. Um, I had thought cluster bombs would be kind of fun to have on everything in a fleet to deter squadrons. But the problem is that this should, again, it's not enough. You can have only one of them per ship. Once it's a one-time use thing. So while quad laser turrets you can use over and over again, cluster bombs cost the same, and you can only use it once. Granted, you have a much higher chance of getting damage in. You're rolling 4 dice, and you're counting hits and crits. And it's not considered an attack, so they can't scatter or brace. So it's good against the ace, and you get to choose when you use it. So it is helpful for taking out an ace, but the thing is, you're assuming that your opponent's going to be stupid enough to take maybe like, a low health Darth Vader uh, in to attack you, or a low health Tycho Celchu in to attack you. And you know what? He'll probably just go for the ship that's already spent their cluster bombs, or the ship that doesn't have cluster bombs. So the problem is it's too easily avoidable. You're like, haha, I have guns all the way. I have guns all in my front. Don't approach the front of my base. Okay, well, we'll go around to the back. Darn. It's kind of like that. So you're kind of broadcasting your strategy when you have that. Um, and that's one of the things. Another thing that's interesting is people like to run raiders, and while I do like raiders, there's I'm going to talk about the impetuous title. So let's say you're running a raider with impetuous, and you're thinking, all right, it's great because he gets to attack again against squadrons. So granted, raiders are great for attacking squadrons, but if this is the only one that you're running, let me do this a different way. Um, there we go. If this is the only one you're running, it's just not going to really not going to fly, because the way timing and everything works out, squadrons are either going to activate at the end of at the squadron phase, in other words, after you've already moved and kind of broadcasted, hey guys, I'm going to be here, and you don't have any way to lock them down, so they'll just fly away from you. You're not going to get the chance to shoot at them. Or they're going to go during the squadron phase. So if some I have already activated and you fly there, well, your opponent can now just fly them away. But basically, you're broadcasting your strategy again, and your opponent can very easily, just ignore that ship and go after everybody else. That's the problem I have with impetuous. Um, and the other one that seems really good for this from a certain point of view is the Quasar Fire 2, right? The Quasar is, he's got that red die, and that red die is great for anti-squadron. It's got this huge, it's got long range. And because the range is so much longer, you can hit so many more squadrons, and it's got a pretty wide front arc as it is. So you're like, oh man, I can do so much stuff. I can put Callus on here. There's all kinds of really great anti-squadron stuff. The problem is, if you're trying to go squadronless, to do something like this, you are. What am I pointing over here? You're putting the best carrier in the game, arguably. I would say the Quasar is without a doubt the best pure carrier in the game, and you're not bringing any squadrons for it to carry. So that's kind of my problem with the Quasar Fire 2 in a list like this. I'm just not feeling that. I mean, maybe there's some more stuff will come out that'll make it worthwhile. I wouldn't mind seeing it become more diverse, but I don't think it just doesn't need it. It doesn't need that because it's very, very good at what it does, and that's the thing. But speaking of things that do work, though, the Raider 1, as we've got a Raider 1 up here. The Raider 1 is, in my opinion, the best ship if you're going to go squadron list. It's one of the best ships to include in your list. I would include several. Um, First off, it's got some of the key staple things you need. It's fast. So if it gets stuck and squadrons are trying to kill it, and it's maybe your last ship or whatever, it can go up to speed 4, so it can get away, and it's going to be hard for a lot of squadrons to keep up with it. The guys that have rogue, generally don't go that fast, and the guys that have to be activated, hopefully you were close enough to activate them. Relay is still a problem here, but it's good. The speed is good generally all around. It's got 2 black anti-squadron dice, so whoever does catch up with it is going to probably has a really good chance of taking 2 damage. These black dice just have a lot of sides with a hit on them. That's great, and it has all the upgrades that you really need. One of the ways I really like to run these guys is with flechettes and ordnance experts. And then both titles too. We already talked about an impetuous. That can work, but it's better when comboed, with instigator. And if you're only going to run one raider, run instigator. Instigator is great. It's like an instant gator. Instigator, right? Like I wonder if the art for that was originally an alligator with like a lightning bolt, like he's really fast. Okay, that was terrible. I'm sorry. This is a terrible joke. Um, but yes, ordnance experts with flechette torpedoes and instigator is uh, is pretty nice. You can lock down ships. Um, you can roll your black dice, re-roll until you get the crit, and just trigger them all. So it's also nice if you get to be first player, so you can potentially lock down squadrons before they can activate them and fly them away. But again, great combo, great setup. Callus is another one. You put Agent Callus on there. We already talked about Agent Callus before with the Quasar, but he can work anywhere. He doesn't have to be on this one. Agent Callus is just great. You can add an extra black die, and you can decide because it's while attacking, so you can roll your 2 black dice first. If you get the 2 double, if you get all the damage sides you need, well, maybe you can go for a blue and try to get the accuracy, or you can go for a red and try to go for that Hail Mary double red, or something like that. You get plenty of options when going with Callus, so that is good. On the Rebel side of the house, I really am a fan of the CR90A. And one of the things I like about the CR90A is that they're cheap. You can run a whole bunch of them. Um, I mean, at 44 points, it's fantastic. You can run them with TRC. It just does a lot of things that you need to do in a fleet like this. You One of the things I like is you got red dice on all sides. You do have some good titles if you're running a lot of ships. Like Jaina's Light's one of my favorite titles to run, but unfortunately, you can only have one of those. But running a bunch of CR90s with turbo laser reroute circuits just makes them a threat from all angles, so you can keep them away from the enemy squadrons while still taking pot shots at the flagships or the squadron or the carriers. They're great for that, and they're super fast. The fastest ships in the game, especially because you can give them engine techs, also just completely wrecking the world with them. They're just crazy. No, so nobody can really run from a CR90A. Another thing that's good is Torin Far is pretty good if you are looking to to attack squadrons a lot. Since you've got no squadron to be shooting at the other squadrons, there stands to reason you're going to find yourself in a lot of situations where you're rolling blue dice, especially if you're rebels, because Torin Far is rebel only. So therefore, you're not going to have those raiders, right? And just about all the rebel ships have a blue die in their anti-squadron armament, at least one blue die. And you're probably not going to be massing ships that have double black dice if you're playing rebels. So Torin Far is going to do double duty, and that's one thing I really like about her is that she is going to help when you're attacking ships and when you're attacking squadrons. And also, by the way, if you wanted to go ahead and give your ship counter 1, Torin Far makes that a little bit better, so it's a little bit more usable. Um, so that much is nice. But generally, she's pretty good all around. So I I have reservations about really running anti-squad or no squadron lists very much, but I do want to kind of show you guys a couple of lists that I've got here. So basically, we're running. Can I? If you're playing Rebels, I figure 4 CR90As, each with Intel Officer and Turbo Laser reroute circuits. 2 Hammerhead Scouts, each with Spinal Armament and Gunnery Team, and a GR-75 with Bright Hope, Torrenfar, and Slicer Tools. Slicer Tools to stop their squadron commands, to slow down their whole squadron game. Bright Hope to stop the death by 1,000 cuts, and Torrenfar to support everybody else. That's basically the Rebel idea for this. And then the Imperial version is 2 Raiders, both titles. Both have flechette torpedoes and ordnance experts. I've got Agent Callus on the Instigator, and then the Impetuous has no officer. But then I'm running 4 Architans, each with enhanced armament. And I'm putting Screed on there. Now, normally, I would usually almost always run Vader. And you can certainly run Vader if you wanted to drop something. I would probably uh, I might drop a title, maybe drop an enhanced armament. Probably drop an enhanced armament, yeah. Because I would keep him in the back, so he might not have all the best shots anyway. I kind of maximize the guys in the front. But yeah, that's what I do if I was going to do that. But Screed is nice because he kind of forces those. He really maximizes those Raider dice when they're attacking squadrons. So if you somehow, between your rerolls for Ordnance Experts, if you don't get that crit, he can force you to have that crit. If you wanted to Agent Callus and concentrate fire and rolled 4 black dice and just got hit, 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 all right, well, I can force the crit, slide you, and then I'll still have a damage left over. So that's an idea. I still think I like Vader a little bit better, but this one comes in only 395 points. Again, these are very singular focus lists. They're focused on firepower, long-range firepower, but I haven't done objectives for them yet. I don't take this type of concept super seriously. It's more of something that I'll do occasionally, just to change things up. I haven't done it in a while, but I did want to sit down and talk to you guys today about going squadronless with Armada. I also wrote an article about this, so if you want to read it up, it's on Crabbok.com. I'll put a link to that in this description below. And check out Ryan Kingston's Fleet Builder. It's definitely my favorite Armada Fleet Builder. Nothing against the other ones that are out there. I think I really like all of them. I just find this one's easiest for me to work with generally because I like the visual aspect of it. It feels like I'm just dragging cards into a thing in front of me, so I do like the interface. But all right, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and let me know what you think of going squadronless now. Do you think it's going to become more or less prevalent? And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and click the little bell for alerts. I've got contests going on right now on the forums where you can win a Legion core set. So check that out. Check out Crabbok.com. Check out the forums over there. Lots of cool stuff happening. A lot of cool news coming our way here very soon. So make sure you are subscribed. And thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.